Okay, the last little bit that we're going to look at, okay, we're going to look at the politics of the Gilded Age, okay? So again, looking at kind of what corruption exists in the government. So remember, we talked about gilded, something that's beautiful on the outside, but rotten, corrupt, disgusting on the inside. Okay, so looking at the 1880 presidential election, again, still pretty clear divided between the North and the South, okay, and understand that the West is still being settled at this point, so we are slowly but surely turning those territories into states. Okay, so James A. Garfield is going to win that election. Okay, but unfortunately he's going to be assassinated only 4 months into his presidency. Okay, we see Charles Guiteau. He is the assassin. Okay, a little bit crazy this man was. He kind of became obsessed with the president and met up with the president and basically, gave himself credit for Garfield being elected and wanted basically a government position. So when he was turned down, he basically got this idea to assassinate Garfield. Okay, so he's going to assassinate Garfield on a train station where he's going to be shot twice and kind of left. The doctors couldn't find the second bullet, so they're kind of digging in there. We know sanitation was not the best at this time, so basically created infection where he was going to die. Okay, so his vice president was Chester A. Arthur. Okay, and Guiteau knew that if Garfield died, okay, Chester A. Arthur would become president. Okay, so he is going to be swept away to jail. Chester A. Arthur is going to become president. Okay, with this slide, you do not need to write it, okay, but I kind of want to refresh you into what type of people are voting Democrat and what type of people are voting Republican, okay? Still very much the same type of trends that we saw during Reconstruction after the Civil War. Okay, so African Americans are still voting Lincoln. Remember, that was the party, still voting Lincoln, still voting Republican, because that was the party of Lincoln, okay, but remember they were very anti-immigrant. We see middle class kind of over here on the right. Democrats, okay, white Southerners, farmers, see Catholics, okay, urban working, poor, okay, so pro-labor over here. Okay, not the way that we kind of see these political parties today, but this is how it was still going on. Okay, again, not necessary to write down, but understand kind of who would be voting for who during this time period. Okay, in 1884, we see Grover Cleveland get elected. Okay, again, you still see kind of a very 50-50 clear division between the North and the South. Okay, a little bit of the Democratic Party kind of creeping up into the North, and we'll see this kind of with that patronage and corruption that we saw. Alright, so remember, we talked about this laissez-faire policy of the government. So we know laissez-faire meant hands off, okay? So understand kind of the role of the federal government. We did very little, okay, compared to everything that we think of today. So just know, okay, delivering the mail fell under their duty, so maintaining a national military. And that will kind of lead into our Unit 4 where we start building that up. Collecting taxes and tariffs, and conduct foreign policy. Okay? So understand kind of what group of people was in control at this time period. The leaders of these monopolies or the robber barons. Okay, so here's where we start to see kind of the corruption. Okay, so if the president or the federal government really wasn't in control, how are these robber barons going to get the control? Okay? So party bosses ruled everything. So again, this is a very corrupt time in the government. We talked about buying votes. We will talk about political machines. Okay, not an actual machine, but where politicians or parties controlling local governments. Okay, again, using corrupt methods like buying votes, intimidation, offering immigrants naturalization, anything they could do to sway the vote in their favor. Okay, and the president is giving out federal jobs to people who aren't qualified, maybe to their friends. And again, this is going to be known as the spoil system or patronage. Okay, so you see in just a short span of time, the amount of positions in the federal government is over tripling. All right, so this idea of patronage. Okay, if you help someone elected, you do them a favor, you work on their campaign, they will reward you with a job, citizenship, whatever it might be to motivate you. Okay, so this goes opposite of what it should be with the merit system where you are earning your job. Okay, so we'll eventually move towards this and away from the corruption. But remember, during that Gilded Age, okay, you're going to see kind of this corruption with patronage. Okay, not very smart because most of the people that they are hiring were not qualified for the jobs. Okay, so again, looking at this picture, who's really in control? Remember when we talk about large people, okay, talking about greed, and you see Steel Beam Trust, Copper Trust, Standard Oil Trust, and we know that trust is another word for monopoly. We see the interest per monopolist up here in the corner, and it says over here, if you can see it, this is a Senate of the monopolists, by the monopolists, for the monopolists, okay, so again, kind of a play on words, but showing who's really kind of in control of the government. So if you look over here, people's entrance closed, people don't have a say, monopolies ruling over the government. Okay, so again, very much like we talked about the other day, government and robber barons are going hand in hand. All right, one specific example that I need you to know, okay, is going to be Tammany Hall. Okay, so again, a corrupt political machine. So again, we're not talking about an actual machine. And Tammany Hall is not an actual place, okay? This is a nickname for the Democratic Party in New York, okay? So again, like we said, very corrupt tactics to get them to vote for who they wanted to become in power, and most likely who they wanted to become in power was going to be the people who could get their agenda across or get what they wanted done. Okay, so Tammany Hall is not a place, the nickname for the political machine, okay, getting votes for the Democratic Party. You need to know it is going to be led up by Boss Tweed. Okay, he was the head of this political machine. Okay, so he's a party boss. Okay, he's going to control election. Again, he's corrupting these officials, judges, things like that, and he's going to be backed up by big business. Okay, so he can make those corrupt votes happen. So if you look at here, you see Boss Tweed over here leaning on the ballot box. In counting, there is strength. Okay, so again, who do you think is going to be counting these votes? Okay, so down here it says that's what's the matter. Boss Tweed, as long as I'm counting the votes, what are you going to do about it? Say. Okay, so very much in control until we see this man, Thomas Nast. Okay, he's going to be a political cartoonist for Harper's Weekly. Okay, we look at a lot of cartoons from Harper's Weekly, and you can kind of see some posted up around the room. He is actually going to expose the Tweed ring. Okay, so he publishes cartoons kind of mocking and exemplifying the corruption that Boss Tweed does and basically exposing Tweed as a fraud in all of his criminal activities and eventually getting him caught. So, big thing with Thomas Nast, I want you to know that he is going to bring down Boss Tweed. Okay, other examples of federal corruption is the Credit Mobilier scandal. Okay, so again, during this time period, still working on the Transcontinental Railroad and kind of spreading out that network across the country. In this particular scandal, basically, Congress is quoting the American people and the taxpayers $23 million, okay, where it really didn't cost that much. Okay, so if I'm charging the people more, all that extra money, okay, again, going to those politicians. Okay, so it's coming out of taxpayers' money, going into these big politicians. Okay, more of a fun fact again. We see Grover Cleveland running for president, and he wins. He's the only president to serve 2 non-consecutive terms. Okay, so he wins, leaves office, comes back, and wins again. Alright, so we talked about this last unit with the Populist Party. Okay, just revisiting it very quickly. So the election of 1896, remember we talked about this as the William versus William election. Okay, so William Jennings Bryan was a member of the Populist Party, but he's running as a Democrat again to get his voice heard. He has a bigger platform as a Democrat than a populist. Okay, McKinley was running against him, okay, as a Republican who was supported by big business, especially the railroad. Okay, remember from Unit 1, that Populist Party. Okay, also went against the gold standard, okay, which would hurt the big business and support the farmers. Okay, so in the end, okay, the Populist Party received some representation in the government, but the Republican Party wins again with these kind of illegal tactics of buying votes and so on. Okay, again, a lot of assassinations this time period, okay? Shortly after this election, when McKinley wins, he is also going to be assassinated and dies of an infection known as gangrene. Okay, with the Pendleton Act, again, moving away from the corruption, okay, to make sure that people who deserve the jobs are getting their jobs, we're going to pass the Pendleton Act, which is also known as kind of like the civil service system. Okay, so this is calling on the merit system. You had to take an exam in order to get a government job. Basically, you had to earn it. You had to prove that you were qualified, which makes a lot of people very upset with these people who were using the patronage system or the school system. Okay, we're also going to begin to regulating these big monopolies. Okay, the Gilded Age ain't working for us. We need to regulate and get it in control. The Interstate Commerce Act is going to pass. Okay, so just like the Populist Party wanted, this is going to allow the federal government to regulate railroads. Okay, it's going to help them set a maximum rate, and it's going to go against laissez-faire. So again, we're going to see this being very upsetting to these big businesses taking control during this time period. Okay, and you also need to know the Sherman Antitrust Act. Okay, biggest thing I want you to know right here, okay, it made monopolies illegal. You could not form or maintain a monopoly at this point. Okay, so again, this is allowing smaller businesses to kind of step in and have a chance to compete against big businesses. Okay, so if you see this big lady over here, she's got oil trusts on her back. Okay, and again, she's kind of squashing out the little competition. Okay, so it says the most powerful trust in America and the position of those affected by it. Okay, so they can't get out from under her, they can't compete, but with the Sherman Antitrust, remember trust is another word for monopoly, okay, this is hopefully allowing more competition in businesses.